Hello everyone. Welcome to the Excel training module from Enter Next Gen. We are now going to look at pivot tables, and these things are fantastic. I would say one of the most powerful features in Excel. What a pivot table does is essentially organize and summarize your data so that you can analyze it in different ways. However, like most other functions in Excel, for a pivot table to work appropriately, the data needs to be clean and in a specific format. Yes, you would have heard this kind of stuff before. It needs a good header row, no blank rows or columns anywhere in the data. On the screen here, I have a sample data set that you might come across very often if you're in a sales role. Column A has the list of customers. Column B has the geography details for the sale. Column C has the product that was sold to the customer. Column D has the quantity. And column E has the revenue that was generated by the sale. I'm now going to convert this raw data into a tabular format for the pivot table. This is not a mandatory step for the pivot table creation, but I like to keep my data organized and clean, and we can learn something new today. Now using Control A, I select my data, click on the Home tab, and click on Format as Table option. I like this particular design. We select the data boundary here. Yes, my table has headers, so we keep this check and click on OK. Very quickly, we rename our table to sales underscore data. Now, creation of a pivot table is actually very easy. It's the simplest part of the entire analysis. To create the pivot table, we click on the Insert tab here on the top and the very first button on the left called Pivot Table. You can see that Excel has already picked up our sales data table. Now, if we hadn't done that extra step earlier, or if the data had inconsistencies, this field here would have been blank. We can still create the pivot table by entering the boundary details manually here. Next, it's asking me whether I would like to place my pivot table on a new worksheet or an existing worksheet. So I choose existing worksheet, select the pivot table sheet that I've created here and the cell, and then click OK. This will give us our pivot table ready to be used. Now comes the slightly more complex part of a pivot table, the analysis. So let's spend a couple of minutes looking at the different options we have here. On the left here is where our report will build out. On the right, we have the pivot table fields. You can see that these fields have been built using the column headers that we had in the original data. Hence, it's important that you label the headers appropriately. Now, these fields can be dragged and dropped in 4 different places. For example, let's drag and drop our customer to the rows. You can see that it immediately creates the unique list of all the customers we had in the dataset. It narrows down the list to 10 to 11 customers from the huge dataset that we had originally. Now, next, let's drag the geography field to columns. The 3 regions that we had are created as columns in this report. Now I want to analyze the revenue by each customer in a particular region. So I drag the field called revenue in sum of values and I get my desired view. Now I've done my original analysis and want to look at a slightly different view. I want the quantity that each customer bought in North America and this by product. So the first thing, I'll just lift this field called revenue and drop it back to the field list. I move geography to filters and drag and drop product to columns. We want to look at the quantity, so I just choose the quantity field and drop it to sum of values. This gives us the quantity by individual products for different customers, but we wanted the same only for North America. So in the filter option, we choose North America and click OK. This is where pivot tables are really valuable. You can filter the data as per need and then arrange it as you'd like to see. No big deal. One of the biggest advantages with pivot tables is that they work extremely fast. Whether you're working with 100 rows or 100,000 rows, they calculate just about as fast. The reason behind the speed is that the data from our original dataset is stored in a cache when you create the pivot table. However, the pivot cache has its own issues. Let's check it out. For Apache, 27,750 memory modules were sold in North America. Now I go back to my original dataset, and for Apache North America memory module, I change this to 127,750. Now you would think that it's obvious that this should reflect in our pivot report automatically, but it does not. The data is stored in the pivot cache and the Excel does not refresh the cache every time the data is changed. Instead, we have to manually refresh the cache. This we can do by right clicking on the pivot table and clicking refresh. Now you'll be able to see the change. This is an important thing to keep in mind. Today, we saw that pivot tables are a fantastic way to slice and dice our data, and we've only scratched the surface. Imagine how difficult life would have been if we did all this on the original dataset itself. Still possible, but might take a couple of hours to do the analysis. If you learned something new today, don't forget to click the like button and subscribe to our channel. Do click the bell icon next to subscribe to get notifications of our latest videos. We upload a bunch of them on technology related topics. Thanks for watching.